Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The steam from my shower still clung to the air, warm and hazy, when I stepped back into my room with the towel wrapped loosely around me. I was humming softly, still lost in the comfort of the moment, when I noticed the small piece of silk on the floor, my panties. I bent down to pick them up, thinking I was completely alone. That's when I heard the soft creak of the door. I froze. A slow inhale behind me, a sharp, startled breath that wasn't mine. I turned my head slightly, and there he was. He stood in the doorway, eyes widened, shoulders tensed, his hand still on the knob as if he had opened it without even thinking. The second he realized what he had walked into, he panicked. I could see it in the way he tried to back away slowly, as though moving any faster would draw more attention to the moment we were already trapped inside. But it was too late. He had already seen me, bent over, vulnerable, surprised. My heartbeat hammered in my ears, a rush of warmth spreading across my skin that had nothing to do with the leftover steam. For a brief second, neither of us moved. His gaze darted away, then back again, like his eyes were acting on their own. His throat bobbed with a tense swallow. I straightened, still turned halfway toward him. Our eyes met. That single second felt like an entire conversation, a mix of shock, attraction, curiosity, and something neither of us had expected to feel so intensely. Then, almost without thinking, I let my towel slip just a little, the soft fabric sliding against my fingers. A boldness rose in me, quiet but unmistakable. His breath caught. The room seemed to shrink around us, the air growing heavier with the kind of tension that makes your pulse jump and your thoughts scatter. He didn't speak. I didn't speak. But the silence between us wasn't empty, it was alive, charged, waiting. He took half a step forward before stopping himself, fingers gripping the doorframe as though he wasn't sure whether to stay or run. The mix of nerves and desire in his eyes matched the sudden flutter in my chest. And just as I turned to face him fully, the towel slipped even lower. And that's where everything changed. The moment stretched between us long after he stepped back and closed the door, too gently, too carefully, like he was afraid the smallest sound would shatter whatever fragile boundary we had just crossed. I stood there in the quiet, my towel clinging weakly to me, my breath uneven. It wasn't just embarrassment. It wasn't just surprise. It was something deeper. Something that had been waiting under the surface for a long time. Because this wasn't a stranger. It was him, the one person I kept pretending I didn't notice the same way he tried to pretend he didn't notice me. We'd been dancing around each other for months, hiding small pieces of ourselves behind jokes and polite smiles. Living together had only made it harder. Breakfast in the same kitchen. Late nights with movies we barely watched. The way he'd glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking. The way my heartbeat always changed whenever he walked into the room. But neither of us ever said anything. Maybe we were afraid of ruining what we already had. Maybe we were afraid of wanting something too much. I wrapped the towel tighter around me and sat on the edge of my bed. My mind replayed the look on his face over and over: shock, worry, and something else he definitely didn't mean to reveal. It wasn't just attraction. It was longing. Recognition. Like he'd been holding something back for so long that it finally slipped through the cracks. Earlier that day, we had argued, nothing dramatic, just one of those small, sharp disagreements that only happen when two people care too much to admit it. He said I never let him help with anything. I said he hovered too much. We both pretended we weren't bothered, but we were. And now, after what just happened, every wall between us felt paper thin. A soft knock interrupted my spiral. He never knocked on my door. Not once. "Are you okay?" he asked through the wood, his voice tight, lower than usual. I swallowed. My heart thumped hard enough that I wondered if he could hear it. "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice didn't sound steady. Silence. Then a quiet exhale. "I didn't mean to walk in. I swear I didn't." But he stopped, like he had almost said something else. Something true. "But," I whispered. Another pause. Longer this time. Heavy. "But the way you looked at me," his voice faltered. I don't know what that meant. The air thickened again, even with the door separating us. I stood, the towel slipping a little as I moved closer. My fingers hovered over the doorknob. My heartbeat raced, not from fear, but from finally facing something I had been avoiding. What if this moment was the beginning of every unspoken truth finally unraveling? I turned the knob slowly, and opened the door. The door opened slowly, and for a moment, neither of us breathed. He stood there, too close, closer than he'd ever dared to be before. His eyes flicked from my face to the edge of my towel and then back up again, like he was fighting a battle he wasn't supposed to let me see. But I saw it. All of it. That same pull that had been building between us for months, now impossible to hide. He stepped back only half a foot, just enough to seem polite but not enough to break the tension humming in the air. "I just wanted to make sure you're okay," he said softly, but the strain in his voice told a different story. "I'm fine," I whispered, too quickly, too breathlessly. He noticed. His jaw tightened, his fingers curling slightly against his side. "Right. Fine." The way he repeated it sounded like it bothered him more than he expected. Like he wished I had said something else. Something truer. For a split second, I wondered if he really was that worried, or if he couldn't get the image of me bent over out of his head. The idea made warmth spread through my chest, and lower. I crossed my arms loosely over my towel, not to hide, but because I knew his eyes followed every small movement. He tried to look away, but jealousy flickered there, sharp and brief. As if he hated that he had seen me like that by accident instead of by invitation. "You didn't have to knock," I said quietly. His eyes snapped back to mine. I didn't want to cross a line. We both knew he already had. We both knew I didn't mind. A faint, dangerous smile tugged at my lips before I could stop it. "You've crossed worse." His breath caught. "Just once." Barely noticeable, unless someone was watching closely. And I was. He took a small step toward me, his voice dropping. "Why does it feel like you're trying to make this harder?" "Maybe," I murmured, "because you keep pretending you don't want it." Silence. Heavy. Blistering. His fingers twitched again, like he wanted to reach for me but held himself back with the last thread of control he still had. "Be careful," he whispered, eyes darkening with something he'd kept buried too long. "You don't know what you're doing." But he was wrong. I knew exactly what I was doing. And he was one breath away from giving in. The air between us practically vibrated as we stood in the doorway, too close, too aware, too charged to pretend anymore. He looked like he was fighting every instinct in his body, shoulders tense, jaw tight, eyes refusing to leave mine even for a second. I could feel the gravity pulling us together, slow but impossible to resist. "Maybe we should talk," he said, but the roughness in his voice made it sound like he meant anything but talking. "Then come in," I whispered. He hesitated only a heartbeat, one single beat that felt like the last moment of sanity, before stepping into my room and closing the door behind him. The soft click of the latch felt louder than it should have. Final. Almost dangerous. We were alone. No interruptions. No excuses. The room still smelled faintly of my soap and warm steam, and I caught the way he inhaled the moment he crossed the threshold, slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing me. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said, voice low. "Or easier," I answered. That made him stop in the middle of the room, looking at me like I had said something forbidden. Maybe I had. Maybe it was time. He glanced at the towel wrapped around me, then tore his eyes upward again, but not fast enough for me to miss. His restraint was slipping, cracking at the edges. He rubbed the back of his neck, frustration and desire mixing into one expression he couldn't hide. "I shouldn't be in here," he murmured. "Then why did you close the door?" I asked softly. His breath hitched, barely. But I caught it. "Of course I did." He moved closer. Slow. Careful. Like he was approaching something fragile and explosive at the same time. When he stopped in front of me, only inches between us, I felt the warmth of him wrap around me before he even touched me. "Because," he whispered, "if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to stop myself." My fingers twitched at my side, wanting to reach out, wanting to feel him, wanting him to finally break that impossible distance. "And what if I don't want you to stop?" I asked, breath unsteady. His eyes darkened, completely. That was it. The moment the line between us dissolved. He leaned in, his forehead almost touching mine, his breath feathering against my lips, but then a sudden sound echoed from down the hall. A voice. A knock. Footsteps approaching. We froze. And just like that, the moment shattered. The footsteps in the hallway grew louder, clearer, until both of us were holding our breath like the wrong exhale could expose everything we hadn't even done yet. His face hovered inches from mine, eyes dark with a truth that neither of us had dared to speak aloud, until now. Then the knocking came. Firm. Urgent. He stepped back instantly, tension snapping through his body like a pulled wire. I clutched the towel tighter around myself, but not because of modesty, because I suddenly sensed something was very, very wrong. "Are you expecting someone?" he whispered. I shook my head. The doorknob twisted. Before either of us could move, the door cracked open and she walked in. His ex. The one he insisted he was completely over. The one who lived in another city and never visits without warning. But there she was, standing in my doorway, eyes widening as she took in the scene, him, standing in my room, breathing hard. Me, fresh out of the shower. And the unmistakable tension that no one could pretend wasn't there. The silence broke like glass. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice trembling between shock and fury. He stepped forward. "This isn't what it looks like." But even he didn't sound convinced. Her eyes darted between us, his flushed face, the towel I held, the way we instinctively shifted near each other as if pulled by invisible gravity. "So it's true," she whispered. "You weren't distant because of work. You were distant because of her." My chest tightened. Because she wasn't entirely wrong, but she wasn't right either. I shook my head. "This just happened. We didn't plan," she cut me off with a broken, humorless laugh. "You didn't plan it? That's supposed to make me feel better?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated and torn. "You and I ended months ago. Even if we never said it out loud, we both knew it." "That isn't what you told me last week," she shot back, tears brimming. My heartbeat stumbled. Last week? What did he tell her last week? I turned to him, searching his face. What is she talking about? He froze. Completely. Then the truth spilled out in a low, painful confession. I tried to make it work again. I tried to convince myself I didn't feel this. His eyes moved to me, soft and devastated. But I couldn't lie anymore. Not to her. Not to myself. Her tears spilled over. She looked at him like he had broken her twice. So you came here, she whispered, voice cracking. Right into her room. Right into her arms. We weren't, he began, but she lifted a hand to stop him. It doesn't matter, she said quietly. You've already chosen. And before either of us could respond, she turned and walked out, leaving a trail of heartbreak echoing down the hallway. The door swung shut behind her. He stood there frozen. I stood there breathless. And between us hung a choice, heavy, dangerous, irreversible. He finally whispered, voice shaking, now you know the truth, so what do we do? The silence after she walked out was suffocating. He stood there with his hand still half raised, as if he could pull back the moment, undo the damage, rewrite everything he had just confessed. I stood frozen in front of him, the towel clutched tight in my hands, my heart pounding so loudly it drowned out everything else. Finally, he broke. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he said, voice strained, eyes glassy with regret and frustration. I didn't want to hurt anyone, especially not you. I swallowed hard. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell her? You let me fall into this without knowing the truth. He winced like my words hit him physically. I know. I was a coward. I kept hoping things would sort themselves out. That I could keep my feelings for you hidden long enough to figure everything else out. And did that ever work? I shot back. His shoulders slumped. No. Not for a second. I turned away, pacing to the other side of the room. The air still smelled faintly of steam and shampoo, nothing like the chaos churning inside me. He watched me with that same tortured expression that had been slowly unraveling since the door opened. You should go after her, I said quietly, even though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. No, his reply was immediate, firm. She deserves honesty, not another empty apology. And you, he stepped toward me slowly, cautiously. You deserve the truth. Every part of it. I looked at him, unsure whether to brace myself or let myself soften. He took a shaky breath. I didn't try to get back with her because I loved her. I tried because I was terrified of how I felt about you. Terrified I'd ruin everything. Terrified I'd want you more than I should. My chest tightened painfully. Then when did you stop being terrified? I whispered. His eyes locked onto mine, raw, vulnerable, broken open. Right now. Because I just lost something important to me, and I don't want to lose you too. Emotion surged in my throat, hot and overwhelming. I wrapped the towel tighter around me, not out of modesty, but to keep from shaking. But we can't pretend this didn't hurt, I said. That this didn't change everything. I know, he breathed. And I'm willing to face whatever comes next. Even if you walk away. He stood there, hands trembling, voice unsteady, finally stripped of every defense he'd been clinging to. I stepped closer. I'm not walking away, I said softly. But you need to fix what's broken. Not just with her, but in yourself. His ex's footsteps echoed faintly down the hall, farther, quieter, gone. He nodded, eyes wet but relieved. I will. I promise. For the first time since the chaos erupted, I felt something shift, slowly, gently, toward healing. Toward us. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. The real ending was still waiting. The house grew quiet after everything that had happened, no more footsteps, no more slamming doors, no more voices raised in hurt or confusion. Just the stillness left behind after a storm. I stood by the window, clutching the edges of my towel, watching the soft evening light settle into the room. The silence felt heavy, but not empty. Behind me, I heard his footsteps, slow, hesitant, but certain enough to mean he wasn't running anymore. Hey, he said softly. I turned. He wasn't tense now. He wasn't trying to hide behind careful words or half-truths. He looked tired, yes, but relieved. Like he'd finally stopped fighting himself. I talked to her, he said. Really talked. I told her everything. No excuses. No lies. I nodded, a soft exhale slipping out of me. Is she okay? She will be, he answered honestly. But she deserves to heal without being stuck in the middle of something that wasn't fair to her. I could see the weight lifting from him, piece by piece, replaced with something gentler, hope, clarity, maybe even peace. He stepped closer. And I told her I was in love with someone else. My breath hitched. You did? He nodded, eyes fixed on mine. I didn't say your name. I didn't have to. Warmth spread through me, slow, careful, but real. I let out a shaky laugh. You sure know how to turn a disaster into a confession. He smiled, small and sincere. I didn't want to lose you. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he reached out, slowly, giving me all the time in the world to pull away. I didn't. His fingers brushed my arm, warm and gentle, sending a soft shiver through me. You okay? He asked quietly. I nodded. Yeah. For the first time today. I think I am. He let out a breath he'd been holding for far too long. Then, with a tenderness I didn't expect after everything we'd been through, he wrapped his arms around me, careful not to disturb the towel, careful not to push beyond comfort. Just an embrace. Warm, reassuring, grounding. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the steady thump of his heartbeat, a sound that felt like safety. We'll take it slow, he murmured into my hair. No pressure. No rushing. Just us. Finally us. I closed my eyes, letting the moment sink into me. The chaos, the hurt, the jealousy, the doubts, everything had led to this quiet, fragile, beautiful realization. We'll figure it out, I whispered. Together. He pulled back just enough to look at me, brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His smile grew, soft, promising, a little shy. Can I kiss you? He asked. My chest fluttered, warm and full. Yeah, I whispered back. You can. And he kissed me, gentle, slow, full of every unspoken feeling that had been waiting for its moment to finally breathe. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was right.